Hi everyone, I am Summer from Social Peta. I am the BD director from the #1 ad intelligence platform. Social Peta covers over 1 billion ad creatives on main ad channels like Facebook, Google, TikTok, and so on. We can also provide intelligence for costs and app intelligence. Today, I would like to give the brief about the marketing insights, specifically for mobile gaming in 2021. And also we can see the trend in 2022. Please join me and I'm gonna share the dashboard. Now I'm sharing the content for the insights of mobile game marketing insights. All the data and the analysis are mainly from our dashboard, Social Peta. It will include 5 contents. The very first one is we would like to take a look for the mobile marketing game insights. And the second part is we will analyze the cost, especially on Facebook. The third part, we will focusing on how to find your competitor marketing strategy. We will also share some case and industry trends in fourth and fifth parts. Okay, let's take a look for the popular advertising markets and the hot game types on our dashboard. We can see that during last year, there is a lot of changes in China mainland market. The obviously change is we can see the version of numbers and the type of advertisers have changed. It changed from the legend and Xianxia games to the money-making or the casual games. We can see on the left panel that the share of advertising by game categories. Role-play game has the most advertisers, which account for 23%. Meanwhile, puzzle games has the best creative quantity, which accounting for 30%. We can also see that the trend by monthly creative quantity. Totally, the quantity of advertisers in 2021 was 10.5 thousand, and the monthly advertiser is 3.7 thousand. And we can see that the peak happens in July and August, which means that the advertisers spend a lot of budget during the July and August last year. We can see from this chart that they are the top 10 mobile games in China mainland. The very first list is by advertising quantity, and in the middle we analyze it by the downloads in top 10, and the third one is the top 10 revenue games. Both the Mobile Legends rank first, both the download and the revenue in China. And let's take a look for the situation in US. And we can see that both casual and puzzle games has the biggest advertiser quantity as well as creative quantity. We can see that by the left panel, which represents the share of advertising by game categories. It says that casual games has the most advertisers and creative quantity. It's accounting for 26% for the advertiser quantity and has 15% of creatives. And also we can see from the panel on left, you can see that still there will be different situation in different months, and the peak month happens in April, which is a little bit different from Chinese situation. And we can see that the total quantity of advertiser in 2021 was 40.4 thousand, and the monthly advertiser quantity is 13.3 thousand. Also, let's take a look for the top games in US. We split to iOS and Google. And totally, we can see that the top 10 advertising games, they are a lot of like slots game or casual game. For example, the Cash Frenzy or Jackpot World, Las Vegas slots. They are the very representative slots games, and they are the top 3 advertisers. And for the App Store, we can see that both Roblox rank the top download and the top revenue games. Meanwhile, the situation in Google is a little bit different. The best download game is Roblox, but the most revenue games is Coin Master. So that's the situation in US. In terms of Japan and South Korea, we can see that still that role-play game dominates the advertising part. We can see that on the left panel, casual games and puzzle games has the best or the most advertiser quantity in Japan and South Korea. And there are also like role-play game advertisers in South Korea and more strategy game advertisers in Japan. We can see in the right panel that the total quantity of advertisers in Japan was 10.9 thousand, with 5,000.4 thousand is the monthly advertiser quantity. Meanwhile, the total creative advertiser quantity in South Korea was 9.6 thousand, with 4.8 thousand more monthly advertiser quantity. And it's more evenly growing or evenly change among different months in both Japan and South Korea. Let's take a look for the top 10 games in Japan first. We can see that the game for advertising, for the top advertising is still War Robots. And the very first ranking for both iOS and Google Play is the anime style products, both in iOS and the Google system. And the best performing game in South Korea, we can also see that for iOS, it looks like that the casual game has become the best download as well as the best revenue game. And for Google Play, it's still, for the revenue, is still the role-play game category. And also for the next part, let's take a look for the cost, which is also the most popular topic for marketing people. And we will mainly focus on Facebook because globally, Facebook is still the top 1 ad platform for all kinds of advertisers. And you can see that it has 4 main medias. We can see for the mobile game on Facebook, casual games has become the most big quantity of advertisers. And meanwhile, role-play game has the best quantity of creatives. We can see on the left panel that casual games has accounting for 17.24% shares for the advertiser quantity, while the puzzle game account for 8.15% of advertisers. And on the right panel, we can see the share of creatives. We can see that role-play games has the highest creative quantity. The total figure is almost 6 million, and in the whole year, which accounting for 14.95% totally. And we can see that the total RPG advertiser quantity is about 18.2 thousand. Also, let's take a look for the trend of games of games, mobile games, totally on Facebook, we can see that totally the advertising cost increased, and the year-on-year growth for CPM is 34%. Also, we can see that the average CPC is $2.88 US, and the year-on-year growth is already up to 81%. Meanwhile, the CTR is going down. The average CTR for the yearly gaming is 1.28%, while it has gone down for almost 30% for the CTR of gaming on Facebook, which means that the CPM is going high, is going up. Well, the average CPM is around $21 US, while the year-on-year growth is, just like I mentioned, is 34%. We can take a look geographically. You can see that the average CPM for mobile games in Australia has already surpassed $48 US. We can see that mobile games in Australia has the highest advertising costs. Not only the CPM, but also the CPC is $4.42 US, and the CTR of average is 1.08%. Compared with last year, the CPM has increased by almost 93%, which is huge. And we can also see that CPM in Asia Pacific country and regions also increased. And you can see that half of the top 10 regions are from Asian Pacific country and regions. Let's take a look for the situation of Google, because say if mainly for Facebook plus Google, they dominate the installations for majority of advertisers. And Google, we include the AdMob plus YouTube. We can see that the media buy, totally media buy situation for gaming on AdMob. Firstly, you can see that the total quantity of advertisers for mobile games is 22.1 thousand in last year, and the quantity of advertisers for each month is already 5.4 thousand. And the peak happens in July. You can see that the peak of the advertisers is almost like 7,000 advertisers for this month. Also, we can see that the total creative quantity is also very big. The total creative quantity is near like 980,000, and the monthly creative quantity is more than 142,000 on Google. Meanwhile, that we can see what's the most popular creative type, which is also the casual games. Casual games has the most creative advertiser quantity. Meanwhile, puzzle game has the most creative quantity. We can see from the left panel that casual game advertisers are the highest proportion and accounting for 18% for advertiser proportion. And the following advertiser categories are puzzle game and simulation games. Separately, the accounting for 14% and the 8.6%. Also, you can see on the right panel that puzzle games had the most creative quantity, and the total quantity is near 180,000, which accounting for 16%. And the puzzle game advertisers was about 4,000 totally. Except the analysis on different ad channel, you can also focusing on a specific competitor, especially you want to analyze your competitor strategy and to give some guidance for your own. On social media, there will be 3 steps to help you to do so. First one is you can identify the top competitor through ranking. In our ad intelligence, you can know who are the biggest players in the same category. Second step is you can subscribe one specific product and you can get the real-time information about their revenue, downloads, and advertising strategy. And step 3 is you can focus on the main areas of advertising, then optimize your own advertising strategy in game. Let's take a look first for the top download and revenue in last year. We can see that for the top downloads, for the top 20, the top 3 is Subway Surfers, Project Makeover, and Roblox. And for the revenue for the top 20, you can see that it's from Tencent as well as from Roblox. And you can check any of the top players' situation in our ad intelligence. For example, you can subscribe your competitive advertiser and it will generate more details. And you can see that on on social media, for this specific product, what's its revenue, what's its download, and advertising strategy. For example, you can start with the filters of the category you're interested in. Then you can also narrow down with the theme for the ad creatives. Then it will generate for this specific advertiser, what's the region they mainly promoted, what's the other ad channels they mainly used at different time, which they were using heavily. And also you can see for the cost, what's the cost situation. Then combining all the information, you may have a more clear mind for how to start your own launching. For example, we can use the cost intelligence on social media to see the trend for different category. And you can start to see like the CPM or CTR to judge for which region you can start launching, or what's the benchmark for the marketing to evaluate whether your own marketing team is in healthy situation. And you can see what's the trend weekly to make a real-time judgment to your own optimization strategies. Let's say some cases. Let's take a look for some cases. How did the top games win a market? Let's see how they do it. For example, the very first step is you should identify your target market. You can choose the right regions to advertise based on the identity of competition. We can see from this paragraph that North America remains #1 in the list with a total like 41,000 mobile game advertised, which means this market is definitely the most competitive one. But still they are growing because we can see that the year-on-year growth is near 19%. And secondly, we can see that Europe, Oceania, Southeast Asia, and Africa, we can see the decrease in advertiser quantity with a decrease of 3,000 advertisers in Europe, which means they are not the competitive as before. So it may give you an idea that maybe you can try to launch from as Europe as a starter. It will be comparatively easier to start with the US situation. And also you can see that game categories are strongly correlated with regions. For example, you can see the creative quantity for RPG have accounting for 16%, and a higher percentage of creative for casino games happens in bigger proportion in Asia Pacific region, which means they are more popular among this kind of players. And you can see in different region, in different month, different timing, The competition is also different. The peak happens among July and August, which means a lot of advertisers, they do promotions during this time. Maybe you can try some other time to avoid the competitive. Let's take a look for a specific case for Genshin Impact. We all know that Genshin Impact is almost very popular among the world, and we find a very similar product called Tower and Fantasy, because based on our understanding that Genshin Impact and the Tower of Fantasy are competitive games, because they are both have the concept of open world role play, and for style, they are all the anime style games. They share very similar targets players. Then if you are the marketer from Tower of Fantasy, which is mainly promoted in China mainland, not the overseas, not the worldwide yet, but if they plan to do so, Genshin Impact will be a perfect reference for them to analyze the marketing strategy. We can know that for the Genshin Impact searching, the dominant searching comes from America, Brazil, and Russia. So which means a lot of audience locates in these three countries and regions, and you can mark the three regions as first tier targeted markets. Also, you can learn from social data about the formats of different game categories. You can choose the format of creatives based on users. Each game, we know that has its own target user groups. They share the similarity. From the observations of social data, we can know that for Match 3 and the business simulation game, their mainly players are female. Well, the anime style game strategy games, they mainly target for male and the generation. And from social data, we see that there are some popular formats for each game categories. For example, we just mentioned that simulation or Match 3 games, most of the players are female, so they usually will care about, say, the family quarrel or the marriage breakdown or the school bullying themes. We can see the top all the popular games, they use this kind of stories in their video creatives, like the family fun adventure, also homescapes or project makeover. They has the very successful formats, and you can, if you want to target the similar audience, you can try from these kind of three formats or stories, using it on your own creatives. Also, you can see for different games, they have their own or unique methods. For example, if your game come along with your own IP, which means they can easily seize the attention of your target market. And when they doing like the creative for their marketing, they will use the popular IP to quickly gain like their targets, like their target players. For example, in the Japanese market, Punishing Grey Raven partner with the Japanese local IP Near Automata to become the 15th best-selling game on iOS system in Japan. Also, for Identity 5 is even more popular, and you can see that they have a brilliant localization strategy, and they use the IP with a lot of Japanese local profiles, such as Case Closed, Paganropa, and The Promised Neverland, and so on, to make a very successful promotion. The last part is we will also share some mobile game trends from our partners. We can see that for strategy game, there is a very clear trend that marketers are trying more and more real people into their creatives to perform a very interesting or a very attractive story. We use three very successful examples: Rise of Kingdoms, State of Survival, and The Lord of the Rings. We can see that according to the mobile game creatives on Facebook, on social media, strategy used focusing use on real to do their ad creatives. Start with the latest games. They have used a lot of creatives involve real people. For example, The Rise of Kingdoms. And you can see that for the Warpath, upon the release in March in this year, the market began to use a lot of real game for strategy games. Comparing with the storylines in the past, it's hard for real people creative to deliver those wild images, but it can involve more convincing with real people on camera, and it will enhance the social performance of strategy. Real people can play all kind of stories, the funny one, the scary one, or even the more social one. So that's one of the trends we can see from social media. Also, another trend is for the mid-core or the hardcore games, like role-play games. For their creatives, they have more combination with the casual games. For example, the Lost Mobile, the Ants, and Kiss of War. We can see that these as examples. For example, as we all know that strategy is a hardcore game, so it's a long circle operation, and continuous advertising is very crucial. We can see that they used to use creatives to illustrate the gameplay for their game. And now they use a lot of interesting formats. For example, under the general background, SLG games to use the thoughts of carol games by adding the casual puzzle or other elements which is popular among casual games into their creatives. Through all over retention rates of casual game players, though, game companies still want to try it because of the relatively low cost and the large scale of casual users, especially the games we see that they has already promoted for quite a long time. Their original users have the awareness of this game. If they want to target the new players, new people, they might use this kind of angle to gain their interests. That will be the main point for today's sharing. Also, we can share some forecasts from the partners of social media. Like from Mouton, we can see that they will focusing on the new system for iOS 14 and how they impact on their advertising, and they will also do their different angles to competing with other advertisers. So you can see that the competition among different advertisers will still be very fierce, and they will need to do a lot of improvements, and still need to think about how to reach the targeted users effectively. It will be the major question for them. And they will also research how to know more about targeted users reference and to tell the stories of ads to get the user interested. Chatboost is also very famous for their user acquisition capacity, and they will try to, first of all, they will predict that the user privacy is more important than ever. Apple and Google are releasing privacy protection policies that give the advertiser challenges on user acquisition without IDFA. So Chatboost and other networks are developing privacy-safe solutions to keep delivering good performance. Also, hybrid model monetization is a trend. They think that the developers are not satisfied with the waterfall solution only and are targeting as many bidding partners as possible for higher ad revenue. They will help the Helium as the hybrid module monetization solution that support both bidding and unbidding networks. Also, they think that developers are exploring innovative IAP mechanisms and social features to increase user engagement and retention. The last one is from App11. They see some trends from like the advertiser tab, the monetization or user performance. For example, they see that separate currency or NFT products will become the new trend. And also all the advertisers is seeking all kinds of methods to do the monetization. In terms of user acquisition performance, they will see that mobile developers investing more into alternative mobile payments methods recently. And speaking of app and creator economies, they will be the golden mines for marketers. Meanwhile, they will also see that global M&A activity will be more like active within recent days. Business from the impact from COVID-19 is still has still impacts for current business, and companies now has the other side of epidemic are doing well and growth at a very high rate. So frankly speaking, business is still growing. And that will be all the content for today's sharing. If you're interested in our product, please log in our official website. Also, you can email to us to give your inquiries. And thank you for listening. Have a nice day.
Hi, my name is Margarita, and I'm the marketing manager at Alkanos, global provider of localization and translation services for apps, games, and various IT products. Through our working with over 2,000 companies, we have gained a lot of experience in how to make the localization process as seamless as possible for you. And today I will be very happy to share this experience with you. We'll talk about the most profitable languages for game and app localization, touch upon some useful tools that can make this process easier for you, discuss typical localization mistakes. I'll give you a lot of examples, and of course, we'll talk about what tools you can use and what approaches you can use to scale your ASO and UA activities. Okay, let's get started. Let me share my screen with you. Okay, so let's start with the languages that are considered to be the most profitable ones. Of course, I should say that it depends on the type of game or app you have, because certain genres of games and apps are popular in certain regions, and this requires research and competitor research. But generally, companies choose to either go for Tier 1 countries or expand this range of regions. They try to conquer and add regions that are less popular, but there is less population there. This is the approach that was very successfully used by one of our clients, Bachanga, who is the ecosystem of mobile apps. And they have translated their apps into over 50 languages. And this brought their results because they got a lot of revenue from regions that are less popular, and they are not as competitive as, say, the USA or the UK or Germany. I don't mean that you don't need to go for Tier 1 countries, but rather to expand this list of countries and regions you're going for. Here on this graphic, you can see you can see some statistics from Elkanos data. These are the typical languages, the most popular languages that our clients localize their mobile games and apps into. I should say that like the top 10 languages are more or less consistent. They usually include such European languages as German, Portuguese, French, Spanish, Italian, and of course, such languages from Asia as Japanese, Chinese, and Korean. And when I say Chinese, I mean both simplified Chinese and traditional Chinese, though simplified Chinese is more popular. And by Portuguese, I mostly mean Brazilian Portuguese, though Portuguese from Portugal is also there. Just there are many more speakers of Brazilian Portuguese because Brazil is much bigger than Portugal. Also, there are languages get interaction, such languages as Turkish, Arabic, and also languages from the APAC region, Thai, Indonesian, Hindi, Malay, which is not listed here, Vietnamese, and so on. Later, I will give you more examples and you'll be able to see that sometimes such languages can bring you unexpected profit. I mean, more profit than you expect. If you're interested, you can learn more about languages and regions that you can explore in our article, Top 10 Languages for Game Localization. You can find this article on our Elkanos blog. Okay, talking about localization, of course, you think about how to make it how to make it more cost effective for you. And usually companies choose between volunteer translators, freelance translators, and localization companies. I haven't included machine translation here because, you know, machine translation is not reliable enough to use for the end user. And, you know, sometimes professional translators even refuse to work with editing machine translations because it can be incomprehensible sometimes, and it's just easier to translate the text from scratch rather than try to rework and edit the machine translation. So usually it's not a good idea to use machine translation. It's quite risky. Volunteer translators, you can include here community translations because the problems are the same. So the benefits are, of course, the price that you can get it for free or at a very low price. But the problems are that you probably have to wait for a long time until everything is completed. There may be many mistakes because who are volunteer translators? Usually they are people with little or no experience in localization, let alone game localization specifics. They can be people who just want to start a career in localization and they're going to gain their experience on your content, which is good for them, but not very good for you. And of course, that involves problems with management because if you have to contact all of them separately and pay to them separately, send content to them, that's a lot of manual work, that's inconvenient. And also if they make some mistakes and typos, or like if it is a huge Google sheet, for example, if they accidentally edit somebody else's translation, so it can involve a lot of mistakes. It is better if you use localization platforms, which we'll talk about in just a minute. It definitely makes your life easier, but generally, it's a lot of headache to work with volunteer translators or community translations. Freelance translators are better in terms of they are experienced translators, usually native speakers, and they are more or less affordable. But again, it can involve a lot of manual work Imagine that you have to contact all of them by email, by messengers, to send them the information, to get the information from them, to pay for them. That's not convenient. If you use a localization platform, that does make things easier, but again, you bear a lot of responsibility and a lot of micromanagement, which is a headache. There can also be problems with consistency if your localization process is not fine-tuned, if you don't use glossary and things like that. So in order to avoid all that micromanagement and all this headache, so that you don't have to build your localization process from scratch, many companies turn to localization agencies like Elkanos, for example, because localization agency, localization company bears all that responsibility for the quality of the translations, for management of the translators, and basically there is no manual work for you. You just send your files to the project manager and you get back the translations. And every now and then, the project manager may come to you and bring the questions from the translators, but this is not a lot to do. Usually it's done on the localization platform, and it's very easy to answer the questions on the platform. Okay. Oh, one more thing I haven't mentioned. It is important that the translators you use are native speakers of the language, of the target language. That is, if you translate from English to Japanese, the translator should be a native speaker of Japanese and to have a near native level of fluency in English. Because it happens that some companies use non-native speakers, and you may encounter some not very natural sounding language which lacks the flow. So it's the best practice is to use native speakers. Okay, I have talked quite a lot about localization platforms. So what are they? One of the most popular ones are Crowding, Localize, Market, Phrase, Transfer, Expo Editor. There are many more. You have probably heard of some of these ones. And the advantages of the platforms, localization platforms, are that they support a lot of file formats. For example, Crowding supports, I think, over 70 file formats. So you have like JSON file or XML file or strings file, and you just upload it to the platform. You can also set up automatic uploading of your new content and sending it back to you automatically through API. This is also possible. It is very easy to manage the translations, to see who translated what, to add new translators, and to see all the issues, to track them, to resolve them, to see how the progress goes. It's very convenient on such platforms. And also, it is nice to know that translators basically don't have a chance to mess up with the code, because when your file is uploaded to the platform, the code is separate from the text, and the translators only see the text. And there are also there's also automatic QA, so that, for example, if there is a figure or a link and the translator accidentally deletes something from that, the localization platform is going to say, hey, you've missed that, please add that back. And on those platforms, you usually use glossary. If you don't have one, localization company can help you create one. And glossary helps to make sure that translations of the terms is consistent throughout the whole project. And the use of translation memory helps lower the cost for you, because usually localization companies reduce the price for 100% matches. Like at Alkanost, we offer 70% discount for the phrases, words that are repeated throughout the project. So this is about localization platforms for larger projects, for files. And if you want to learn more about them and how to choose one for yourself, please check out my article in our Elkanaz blog about choosing a localization platform. But sometimes you have translations that are relatively easy and short, and probably you don't feel like going to the project manager and sending him a very small text, like, you know, a mobile app update or a small feature that you need to translate to 20 languages. Also, there is a problem that if you go to a localization agency with such a small text, you may be charged the minimum amount for each language, and that's going to be pricey. I mean, if you have a really short text. So for cases like that, you can use our human translation platform Nitro, in which the process is different from localization platforms, because Nitro is a self-service platform. You don't need a project manager to place an order and to get it back. You log into the platform, you paste your text, you choose the languages, you pay for it online, and then you get it back, all the translations, normally within 24 hours. So this is one of the key benefits of Nitro, that the translations are not only done by native speakers, just like for bigger projects at Elkanaz, but also that you get them back really fast in less than 24 hours. There are over 60 languages available on the platform, and it's very easy and fast to place an order. There are no back and forth emails. You can use context for your translations. Like you can see on my screenshot, here is your target, your source text in English, your translation here, and here the customer wrote some context for the translator and answered questions from the translator. So that's a very handy platform if you need to translate something quickly and it is quite a short text, like maybe app store descriptions. Okay. Now let's discuss some typical localization mistakes you may face. Both those who are experienced in localization and those who are not very experienced in it may face such problems. So the first one is very typical, is the length of characters. Especially in mobile apps and games, you face this problem that you have some limits for the strings. And when you translate from English into other languages, you notice that languages like German, Spanish, Russian, French may be 20-25% longer than English words. And that's a problem. To avoid this problem, you can make the interfaces scalable, and that definitely helps. You can see on these examples how long the Russian words are compared to the English ones. And some companies in China translate from Chinese, and Chinese words are even more compact than the English ones. So scalable interfaces are a must, scalable interfaces is a must. And one more thing you can do is to run pseudo localization. It's like a fake localization when you use machine translation into, say, German, which is a language with very long words. And you can use that machine translation just to see how long the translation can get, just to give you an idea of what your scalable interfaces should look like. Another very common problem are tricky fonts for right to left languages and some Asian languages. Right to left languages are Arabic and Hebrew, and they're called this way because they are written from right to left. And on this screenshot, you can see example from one of our Nitro clients. He got this screenshot when the app was rejected in Google Play because the Google Play team found some Chinese characters, these ones, in the Japanese text. So the client wrote to us in the Nitro chat, like, why did the translator use the Chinese characters in a Japanese text? And I was like, it's impossible. He doesn't even have Chinese characters on his Japanese keyboard. So I talked to the translator, and he explained to me that it's quite a common problem, and the problem is apparently with the font. So I passed this information over to the client, and the client checked with the development team, and yeah, the problem was really with the font. I don't know, maybe they used the Chinese font instead of Japanese one. So this is something to pay attention to. You should be careful with that. Otherwise, the characters will be displayed incorrectly. Another interesting thing is that not everyone realizes that localization is not just translation. Localization definitely includes adaptation of some things we don't often think about. You will have to adapt the dates, because like compare the date format in the US for March 11th, and this is what it looks like in Europe. Then time, the US uses 24 no, the US uses 12-hour format, and Europe uses 24-hour format. Measurements of weight and distance, think of pounds and kilos, miles and kilometers, and even the way the discounts work. It's interesting that sometimes when clients get back the translations and there was like 20% discount, and they look at the Chinese translation and they don't see this figure 20%. They see 8 instead, and they're like, oh, what's wrong with this translation? I don't see the figure 20 anywhere. But the thing is that in China, the discounts are in this way. So this is the discount for 20% off. So it says A and 8 in this character, and that means that you pay 80% of the original price. So if you have never encountered that, of course, you're going to be surprised that you don't see the right figures in your translation. Probably the biggest problem for developers who are just starting out in localization is the context, because usually people think that if you give your text to the translator knows the language, so of course they're going to translate everything correctly. But context is really important to understanding how to translate certain phrases. Imagine if you send the translator a long list of words, standalone words and phrases, and no explanations whatsoever. This is going to be a problem, because imagine a word like block. What is block? Is it to block, like to block somebody? Is it a block, like apartment block, or maybe a block like several streets, or maybe it's a toy block, like a toy? So there can be many options, and without explanations, like text explanation, what this thing does, what it looks like, in what situations it is used, maybe, or a screenshot of what this character or this item looks like, the translator may not know how to translate that. So sometimes it's important to know whether the speaker is a female or a male, because in languages like Spanish or French and some other ones, it's important, it will influence the text. And on this example I have here, it refers both to the previous problem and to this one, the context problem. So the client had this text day, like day 1 out of 30, day 5 out of 30. And the client figured that they didn't need to add the figures to the translation, because it does need to be translated, right? So they just have this list of words and there was the word day in it. Okay, day. So the Japanese translated day into Japanese, the Korean translator translated it like this, and the client just inserted it back. But the problem was that in English, it says it really looks like that, day 1 out of 30. But in Japanese and Korean, apparently it looks like first goes the figure 1 out of 30, and then goes the date, the word day. And this translation was rejected by the Google Play team because of it looks wrong. It should be the other way around. But so the client should have used the full version. There was the context, day 1 out of 30, that's the context. Just the standalone word day, there is no context. It's not clear how to translate that. What should be first, the figure or the day? Okay. Now we are moving to what you can do and what tools you can use to scale your ASO activities and UA activities. First, a few words about what ASO is. App Store Optimization. It includes working with the title, subtitle, keywords, description, screenshots, icon, and the video. And you should localize all of that. Video often doesn't need any localization if you don't have any words in it. Icon doesn't necessarily need localization, but all the rest does. Keywords are important, and it's not enough just to translate them from English or any other language. To have the right keywords, you're going to use, you're going to need specialized research with help of ASO tools. There are many ASO platforms now, so you can use any. Description. I've noticed that some developers only translate like the first paragraph or the first couple of sentences for the description if they are on a tight budget. Others translate the whole text, but even more important than the description is localization of the text on the screenshots, because screenshots is something everyone is going to look at. And if you have some text on the screenshots, you need to translate that. Usually it's a very small amount of text, and a lot of our clients use Nitro to translate that. Like you can see in this example here, just insert those texts, you choose the languages, you see the instant quote, and you send it for translation. It's really easy to translate App Store content in Nitro because this is just the right type of content for Nitro to translate that easily, to save your time and to do less manual work. Not to send it to the project manager or something, just to do it in this self-service platform. And that really saves time because it's really quick. So I would recommend you to translate ASO with this self-service platform. Talking about UA activities, I would like to give you an example of our client Arcade, who is a game development company from Turkey. They had a promo text, they had a promo video of their mobile game in English, and they just translated the text in this video into Japanese through Nitro, and they had a great success with that. Here's what they say. The Japanese creative got 70% CTR, and the English one only got a 30% CTR. So they were able to get much more installs because of this creative being in the Japanese language. This is very common to translate the text from video into other languages in Nitro, because if the texts are, just some phrases, it's easy and cheap to translate that in the platform. Oh, I forgot one more example. One of the clients is a gaming publisher, and they use a lot of Google Ads in other languages. Being a publisher, they have a lot of campaigns, and it would take a lot of time just to go to Nitro every time they need to translate something. So what they used, they use Nitro API now, so that they don't even need to log into Nitro. Every new content for those Google Ads that they get it is sent to Nitro automatically through API, and they also get it back through API. So that saves a lot of time because, just one string of text into, I think, 10 languages, and that happens almost daily. That would take a lot of time to monitor that. But thanks to the API, it is done automatically. So that's also a time saver. Now, I would like to share some examples of successful ASO and how ASO and localization influences the number of downloads and the revenue. Here is the mobile app Retouch Me, and these are the results for downloads in various countries before they localized their App Store page. When they localized their App Store copy, the number of downloads grew significantly. You can see how it changed here. Their app was translated into 35 languages. So both the App Store copy and the app itself, and they keep translating the updates in Nitro because they have very short updates. And they have always said that localization for them definitely paid off and was a great solution. This one example from the client Full HP. They have mobile games, Medguns, and blocky cars. When they launched one of their games into the Brazilian platform Catapult, they got featured very quickly. You can see featuring here on this graph, and the number of downloads just soared, but then it dropped back down. They figured it was because the game was in English. It didn't have any translation into Brazilian Portuguese. So they translated the game into Brazilian Portuguese, and after that, the number of downloads started growing. They also shared with us their main, the key countries from which they get their revenue. Their games are translated into 12 languages, and you can see that about 1/3 of their revenue comes from those other languages. Of course, the USA being their #1 country in terms of revenue, and Japan as well is very profitable. The other ones are Thailand, Russia, and Brazil. But like I said, 1/3 of revenue comes from other countries. Remember what I said in the very beginning, that it does make sense to diversify the regions from which you're going to get your revenue. And examples of our clients show that it definitely brings its results. Okay, I think I have shared everything I wanted to talk about today. I would like to encourage you to visit our Elkanos blog and get more examples and insights and tips. And if you're thinking about localization and if you have questions, we'll be very happy to help you. Please reach out to us at Elkanos, and we'll be happy to answer your questions and help. Thank you.